That shit happens.
But if you were going to die, who would take care of that cat?
Again, it just goes to Jacob. He's nurturing. I feel like he'd be there for the cat. I feel like he would make sure it has a healthy glass of whiskey every night. It'd be taken care of.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com.
Good job, Nick.
Head on over to patreon.com and sign up at our newest level to have Jacob babysit your children.
Yeah!
And now, broadcasting from the churn.
There's a level.
That guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Man, a lot of fun on the Patreon. We do movie reviews of a lot of big hits that are in theaters right now. Tell you what to watch, because I think you come to us for that kind of expertise. I think it's what we're mostly known for. And we face a Sophie's choice of who I would ask in this room to take my children if I were facing death or an emergency.
No, you had a third option.
Answer will surprise you.
The third option was no one.
Yeah.
Leave
I was
the kids
given
to
many
fend for
options.
themselves.
All of them bad. It was a Sophie's choice kind of episode. Patreon.com/therapy.
Spoiler, he didn't pick Sophie.
We need to, at some point, I want to dedicate a big portion of the Patreon to just going deep into the conspiracy theory of the UFO thing. And I've talked to you guys about it briefly, and then Jacob just fucking turns on the theme song, and I never get a chance to talk about it more. But you guys, we need to talk about this at some point.
What?
Because it's fucking huge. God damn it! This is why I never get to have nice things. You guys need to learn about this. Have you not seen anything about this? He's not going to turn it off.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I got it right that time. And now broadcasting from the churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. Still, it's time for Pod Therapy.
So another thing on Patreon that you guys should check out.
Intro number one.
Yeah, scrap it. I don't care. He's drunk with power.
Play them both.
The aliens are there. You need to know about this. So I'm not going to talk about that. Our patreon.com/therapy community, we have a Discord that's attached to it. The Discord is very active. And if you're a Patreon, you can come check it out. And one of our patrons, Tess Miller, has launched a pen pal program that you can sign up for if you're a Patreon.
Oh, nice.
Yep. So go into the Patreon. We're going to post about it there, and we'll give you links to everything and how to participate. But there's people from all over the planet that are going to participate in this. It's a great way to make friends and write more long-form communication with people that are kind and they like mental health and they're part of our community. So if that appeals to you and you're like, oh my God, like I'd love to have a pen pal somewhere on the planet where we just, send emails to each other. Or I think it's actually physical letters. I think they actually do physical letters. And
I would think it'd be physical letters.
I think it's physical letters. Yeah, I think physical letters.
You're going to do it. You might as well do it.
Yeah, postcards, souvenirs, that kind of thing. So, Tess Miller put it together, and so it's going to be this really fun project. If you'd like to be a part of it, come down to patreon.com/therapy. That's where we will post information about it. And, you can be a part of that. So, fun times. But yeah, at some point, guys, we need to talk about it. Look, I will limit my alien commentary to... God damn it. God damn it. I don't think we've ever gone 3 in a row. So, all right, I'm just going to read the letter.
We're not going to.
Yeah, I'm just going to read the letter. It's fine. It's fine. I'll get Paul. Paul will talk to me about it. Aliens are real. Congress admitted it. Check it out. My mom, sister, and love life from Anonymous. Hi, folks. How are you doing? I'm really happy to finally write this, even if it's never going to be read. Hey, good news, writer. It's being read right now.
Or is it?
Your podcasts are like therapy sessions for me, and I really appreciate what you're doing and the effort you're putting into these. Thank you, genuinely. I hope you enjoy doing and creating these. Also, sorry for any spelling or grammar mistakes. English isn't my main language. On with the reason that I'm writing. I've recently had a small argument with the writer is 23 and male, older sister who's 26, while driving her to her friend's house. It was about my love life, more specifically, me not wanting to share about my love life. She spent most of the drive in silence, texting some dude she matched with on a dating app. She and her boyfriend are in an open relationship. And as we were chatting about the guy, she asked me if I go on dates or have had any hookups. When I replied that I did, but wouldn't elaborate after she'd asked me to, she got mad at me for not sharing and stopped talking altogether. I told her she shouldn't punish me for not liking to talk about myself, and that I like her and I like to listen to her, but she still told me that my unwillingness to share made her not want to talk to me at all. She said she feels like we are like mom and dad, that she constantly talks like our mom, and I only listen like dad. I understood, but said I still don't feel like telling her about these things. That was when the conversation was over, and she kept to herself and her phone. This made me realize a few things that are actually quite worrying me regarding my love life. I'm a very private person. That doesn't mean I don't share with anyone anything, but it means that if I want to keep something to myself, I do so without any problems. I never had a slip up, maybe? I've never had a sleep up, never shared anything or said anything I didn't mean to. In romantic relationships, it usually...
Slip up.
I think it's slip up. It usually means I'm the one listening. It could sometimes be somewhere around 95% of her talking and me just taking it in. I enjoy knowing stuff about the person in front of me, and I feel valued to a person when they open up to me. And so maybe I also enjoy the power trip I get from it. The problem is, I don't generally value talkative people. In my language, we call people who talk too much drillers, because I recognize it as somewhat a selfish trait, and a weakened one at that. I don't mind it in general, and I'll never look down on a person who talks a lot, but my attraction mechanisms are judges that are always on, so I know what happens in the back of my mind. So those two facts about me naturally collide. The fact that I can spend hours at a time listening to my date means that people who like to talk, they like me. And the fact that I actively try to avoid talking about myself means that I, without meaning, noticing, or wanting to, reject people who like to listen, and who like to listen to me at that. This has happened more times than I'd like to admit, and I'm starting to fear that it will never stop. I'm stuck in a bad place romantically. My second to last date went well, and we both felt really comfortable with each other, but she did like to talk quite a lot. I did continue to ask her questions, but still, it was almost comical when she asked, with a smile on her face and a small sigh of exhaustion, "So, what do you do?" after 2 hours into the date. Again, we had a good time, and we've even set up a time to meet again. But she reminds me of my ex-girlfriend, and our relationship turned very one-sided because of the talking-listening imbalance. This also led to me slowly losing any interest in her, and to her breaking up with me because of that. This makes me afraid because it is exactly what's going on with my parents. My mom constantly talks about herself and her interests, sometimes to the point of completely exhausting the person listening. She knows how to listen, and she really is interested when she does, but she'll start talking again as soon as she'll have something to say, even if the person in front of her didn't finish. My dad is not attracted to my mother at all, or interested in her in any way. He usually sits in silence when he's around her and only talks to my sister and me. In fact, I've never seen them kiss once in my entire life. They've been sleeping in separate rooms for as long as I remember, and they don't have very much in common with each other, aside from my sister and I. They stayed together for the kids, but that did way more damage than good, and I'm sure they understand that now. It's quite similar to breaking up because of the kids, except from the intention, but I digress. Anyway, any way you look at it, I don't blame them at all for it, because the spirit at the time was divorce equals destroyed childhood. However, it still means I grew up with 0 examples of an actual romantic relationship. I also recently found out from my sister, naturally, that my parents were cheating on each other when I was a kid, between 6 and 12, somewhere like this. Funny enough, all it does is make me feel left out, because now I know the only romantic thing going on around me growing up was completely hidden from me. I know it's funny, but I just wish I knew what it looks like when 2 adults are actually attracted to one another. I still don't really know how it looks like. Definitely not when 2 people are in love. This all means I was abysmal in regards to dating girls, until I literally started studying about the subject online, as if I was looking up answers to a test. Naturally, my first time of any type was way out from after everybody else's. So, my only source of romantic knowledge, attraction, and relationship advice is the internet and my small experience. I feel like my family history is leading me like a train on a track to a dead relationship, one-sided at best. I don't know if I'm able to talk about myself. I'm constantly afraid I talk too much. As I'm writing this letter, I'm anxious about its length. I literally stopped to listen to one of the letters that was on your podcast to compare the time it took to read against mine. I'm always apologizing when I say more than a few sentences. I do it in a good spirit, though, but I still hate that I do. I'm not apologetic in general, and my friends keep telling me I should stop telling them I'm sorry for being a driller if and when I tell them how I feel. I hate doing that. but still, I feel like I should at least acknowledge it. I feel like I'm never able to open up to girls I'm dating, which means I'll continue to unknowingly reject women I want and attract women I don't. I don't know if I'll experience actual love or if I'll continue to be wanting someone while being in a relationship with someone else for the rest of my life. Thanks a lot for taking your time and reading this. Not Dr. Jim. I guess they're indicating it's definitely not me. Oh, right. I get it. That's the joke. It's not me. It wasn't me. I didn't write it.
Gotcha.
I think that's the joke.
So, to summarize all this, so our writer is not much of a talker, is a listener.
Right.
Okay. So
not much to talk about themselves.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And in a relationship, so it sounds like, I mean, the big thing here is that what the writer is picking up on is the similarities with him and his parents. So in his parents' relationship, mom was a big talker, dad never talked, dad just listened, and they had a terrible relationship.
And writer is concerned that he's following the same path.
Exactly. So what do we do about this? So I guess first off, I think your observations are really good in that, you know, we learn about adult relationships by watching the relationships that we experience, that we're
on
around.
Top Gun.
Oh yes, I forgot.
I assumed you were going to pivot.
I need to top.
I didn't know if you needed me to volley that.
Well, it just reminds me of something that Goose said.
Yeah. I got your 6.
Yeah, something like that.
Real relationships look a lot like Goose and Maverick. They end catastrophically.
You know, Maverick did a lot of the talking. Goose was there to listen.
He's more the wing.
You know, and then when and throughout the whole rest of the movie, after spoiler alert, Goose dies.
Oh, you son of a bitch! Why would you do that?
But then, well, I mean, you've had 30 years, so if you haven't seen it by now, it's your own fault.
Yeah.
But
blaming the victim.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway,
that's right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Piece of shit.
I don't remember even where I was going with any of that.
What an interesting question from this angle of like, okay, I've heard people talk about this where they're saying I tend to attract somebody that actually I wouldn't do very well with long term. And that's what the writer's talking about. The writer says, I tend to be a listener, so I attract hyper talkers, but then I don't want to settle into the same pattern that my parents did.
Right, which is a little bit of predicting the future.
Sure, yeah.
Because we don't know that that's not going to work for you.
Right.
But I do see that what happens is it creates an environment where you stay in your comfort zone.
Right.
And you don't have to grow out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I have some practical advice because you talk about being on the first base of dating right now, where you're going out with people you're matching with and like having those initial conversations. So I want to speak to that because if you're kind of saying one of the first filters that exists in my dating life is my habit of hyper listening and not offering much verbal content to this economy that we're having between the two of us, and that seems to be weeding out people who would have been shared space people. They would have been people that do 50-50 communication. I'm not offering my 50. So what's happening is that I'm accidentally filtering away people that would have been sharers and equalizers, and I'm accidentally attracting people who monopolize conversation because I tend to not be a sharer in the beginning.
Yep.
And so I'm going to attack that first, and then we need to talk more about this bigger picture of like long-term relationshipy stuff. So I'm a big fan of whenever people are doing the dating thing. I know it sounds super cheesy, and like I have no experience in dating to like say whether or not it's appropriate or not, but I think it's a good idea. I've heard stories where people on the first date, they will come with like little discussion cards. And there's all these like funny games now that are like online that you can buy, these little board games and card games that are like icebreakers and couple communication stuff. And they'll basically bring that with them. And it's like this little like icebreaker like set of cards. They're like, hey, I thought maybe we would go over this. That's nice because it opens up conversation between the two of you. It ensures that there will be some kind of verbal economy. You might not offer a paragraph of answer to every question, and the other person might, but at least it holds your feet to the fire and assures that questions will be asked and that you feel weird not answering them. Like you're owning this. You're making sure that you have to contribute. And if you're worried that, you don't do enough of that honestly, that could be an artificial way to ensure that you do in a dating environment, thus taking away some of that fear you have of like, accidentally filtering away people that would have been equal sharers rather than, monopolizers.
I mean, you could always, go through those questions and maybe, convert a couple to memory to take with you.
Also good
If
idea.
I showed up for a first date and somebody like brings out a box of like cards,
it could be cute.
I'd be like, yeah, maybe.
I don't know. Or an app. I mean, I don't want to commit in memory because the problem's not that he doesn't know how to ask questions. The writer does too much of that. The writer's like a therapist. The writer just asks questions and feels uncomfortable talking about himself. And he's worried because he keeps attracting a pattern of people
I get it.
that love that. But then he's thinking, but that's not healthy for me long term.
Yeah.
Right? Because then I lose interest in them. I'm not sharing who I am. That's not healthy. So, like, to force yourself to do so, you've got to create some kind of mechanism to do that, or you have to practice doing it. And, like, I don't know when you're going to.
The writer did something that rarely happens to me in their letter, and that is made me completely change what I was going to say about halfway through the letter.
Oh, shit. Take us to both answers,
because
please.
my first answer was, fuck them. You don't want to talk about yourself? Don't talk about yourself.
Yeah.
That was my first answer.
Right.
But then the more you wrote, writer, the more I thought, oh, this person wants to do something different.
Yeah.
This person wants there to be a change in their life. And I believe, and correct me if you think this is a misinterpretation, but I believe that this writer is asking us, how can I facilitate this change in myself?
Right. And that's a big question.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Which I think this
And
also,
I think the answer is practice.
I think it's practice, and I think it's also creating mechanisms to force yourself to do that.
So I have two ideas.
Okay.
First idea is our old trusty go-to. Get yourself a therapist.
There it is. Practice talking.
Practice talking. And that's exactly and that is what I would talk to the therapist about. Is say, like, I've got a hard time talking about myself. And part of why I want to come see you is to practice talking to someone about myself.
Yes.
And as we've talked about before, therapists are prostitutes. That is the tagline for this show.
Episode title.
Yep. You are paying them. They are happy to sit there and listen to you talk.
True.
So that's option A. And I think that's a good
optional.
option. I really think that's a good option. And you can also, as a bonus, you get to work on other stuff with your therapist that you may want to work on. You may want to talk about your parents' relationship. You might want to talk about anything. And I think that's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And my option B. So I have an option B for you.
Okay.
And this is only if you say, Jacob, I don't want to talk to a therapist. Believe me, I talk to 2 therapists once a week. That's plenty. I get why you wouldn't want to do that.
And you even get paid to do it.
It's true.
That's a crazy
It's true.
Still,
this is the
still
only
really hard to do that.
This is the only
time 2 therapists pay another guy to listen to them.
Yep.
That's very true.
This does not happen any place else on earth.
That's very true.
So if you don't want to do a therapist, and I really think getting a therapist to help you with this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And I really and I'm not trying to be coy with you or anything, Ryder. I'm really thinking I think it'll be really good practice for you. I think just sitting down, because you're going to explain all of this to that therapist, and that therapist, if they're worth their salt at all, they're going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit on this and say, like, you're going to sit down and they're going to go, tell me about your week.
Right.
What'd you do this week?
Right.
How, you went to work.
Teach me who you
did
are.
you see at work? They're going to start asking you all these leading questions.
And I'll teach you how to language things too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good idea. My option B for you is, if you don't want to do that, it sounds like you've got some good pals. It sounds like you got some good friends that say, what was the term that they used? That was like, if you start talking about yourself too much.
Oh, drilling.
Driller. Yeah.
Driller.
So like, they're telling you that you're silly, calling yourself a driller and everything and all this stuff. So it sounds like you've got some good friends.
Yeah.
So maybe you enlist one or more of those friends. I'd stay with one. I'd start with one. And I would say, hey, I want to become more comfortable, and just explain it to your friend.
Just like you did.
I want to explain. I want to become more comfortable talking about myself, because I'm really uncomfortable with that right now.
Right.
Do me a favor. Once a week, you're either going to call me or we're going to meet up for drinks. I'll buy drinks, whatever the deal is. But we're going to talk. We're not going to text. We're not going to email. We're going to talk. And you are going to force me to tell you about my week.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it doesn't have to get deep. It doesn't have to get into all the stuff that you might get into with the therapist and everything. It can just be, I'm telling you about my experiences this week.
I love these ideas. I love both of them.
And they both boil down to practice.
Practice doing this.
Yep.
This letter also brings up, I think, a really interesting question about how we present ourselves to others. And this thought, similarly, an adjacent thought popped into my head the other day when Nick and I went to the bar after the last show and Jacob refused because he's a killjoy and boring.
That's right.
He's a bore, and I think we all know this.
It's not because I had to be at work 2 hours later. Not exaggerating.
No, that was not an exaggeration at all.
No.
And also not the reason. It's clearly because he was boring.
Yes.
So Nick and I were talking, and and I was telling him a story about other things that had happened in the world, and we were talking about colleagues and things like that. And we were swapping stories about a colleague, and just part of the story was about how I'm an ornery son of a bitch with a lot of our colleagues, and Nick is actually very likable and very kind. And we took it, and during that story, I kind of laughed about it for a second because Nick knows me so well to know, yeah, that's classic Jim. He's a hateful bastard and won't talk to our colleagues because he's frustrated with them or whatever, and I make time for them, and people in our industry know that is like, oh, Nick's the nice one, Jim's a dick. And then we were kind of laughing about the fact that it's like, boy, do we not portray that on Pod Therapy. It really definitely comes off as like, Nick is more stoic and Jim is like this happy slappy guy that likes everybody. But in colleague world, I'm actually kind of an asshole to other colleagues because of whatever. Like I have my beefs with them or things I don't think they're good enough at their job or whatever it is. And like it's interesting to me because it parlays into this letter where the writer talks about the first impression we give to other people is one type of us. Mm-hmm. But then if you're really trying to create a relationship, a romantic relationship, you better get to the fucking point pretty quick where you can show them who you'd really be in a normal relationship. Because what if you accidentally filter away people that you would have been really great in phase 2 with, where you could have really shown them who you are, but you're filtering those away because your phase 1 self definitely chases those fish away and invites other fish who are terrible and incompatible for your real self.
Yeah.
I think about that.
And actually, it kind of ties into something that I was going to say too, which is just that to kind of challenge the perspective of the drillers.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because if we recognize traits in other people and we associate those as being negative traits,
Mm-hmm.
then we work really hard to stay away from that. So, like, okay, so for example, let's just say, Jim, I'm going to call you a driller.
Yeah.
You're one of the people, you just talk constantly, you share about yourself.
I consider myself the Bruce Willis
blah,
of
blah,
drilling.
blah, blah, blah.
I'll save the world.
Or the Maverick.
asteroid.
The Maverick.
You know what? Let's go with that.
Let's call that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just always talking about himself.
Yeah. He's a hot shot. He's
Yep.
badass.
No, you're Iceman.
Grabs the microphone
You're
and sings.
Iceman.
No, Iceman doesn't talk a lot. He's
No,
Iceman.
You're Iceman.
He's cold.
He's Iceman.
I want to be Maverick.
You're Iceman.
Maverick
Sorry.
sings the
We don't
song
get
at the
to
bar.
pick who we are.
Shut up,
She's
Iceman.
lost that love and feeling.
Anyway.
That's not what Iceman sings.
Oh, that love and
So
feeling.
let's just say I'm calling Jim a driller. Okay.
Okay.
He's talking about himself all the time.
You're a
blah,
driller,
blah, blah, blah,
Iceman.
blah. Right. Now, if that's the perspective I have, and in my head I'm saying that's terrible.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to be anywhere near that. Then by me having that perspective, it keeps me stuck where I am.
Oh, sure. I hear
Because
you. Yeah.
I'm way over on the opposite end of
Right.
the
You said
continuum.
avoid that type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So any movement I make towards the center
Right.
is going to feel like
Icky.
I'm a driller.
Right.
When in
Right.
reality, I'm far from
you
it.
have long way to go.
Right? So
Yeah.
when you're way on one side
Right.
of the continuum,
Like if you're frugal and they're like, oh,
Exactly.
would you like to supersize the fries? Like, that's an indulgence I simply cannot afford.
Exactly.
It's like, stop. Like, you're
any
not a
movement-
wasteful guy for
any
getting the
movement,
supersize.
any regression towards the mean is going to
Right,
feel
right.
like an extreme shift.
It's not.
And it's not. So
Yeah.
you need to keep that in mind, number one.
That's a good point.
And I think it's also helpful to, to kind of question and kind of challenge that perspective of drillers. Like, are they doing this because they're so self-focused, or are they just uncomfortable with silence
right.
and they need to fill the time and no one else is talking? So, I mean, it could be that too. So
Which I'm also that guy.
I would try to remove the negative connotation to it, because I think that will help as you ease that transition towards the center.
Right. I think that what we've definitely covered here is that I am clearly Maverick. You are clearly Goose. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're talking about therapy. You're listening to Top Gun! No.
Today's episode is brought to you by Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, Richard Macy, Lord Colin Stewart, Sammy Scoop, Dan Martin, and Polygon. Would you like to sponsor the show and become a therapy producer? Go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. And our trivia theme in honor of our therapy producers this week is full names.
All right.
Man, you really dropped
Tangent.
the ball. Ah, he's good.
What is Mrs. Butterworth's first name?
Oh, shit.
Is it A, Dolly, B, Patty, C, Harriet, D, Joy, or E, Sapphire? If you'd like to join the therapy producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
I know it's not Sapphire.
I'm going to Harriet.
That is a stripper name. It's definitely not
which is
Sapphire.
why I put it in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Harriet.
I don't need that. I don't need these weird kink fantasies of Mrs. Butterworth dancing on the pole helping
You're
me
going to
out.
go with Harriet.
I'm going Harriet.
Harriet Buttersworth? Wait, is it Butters or Butterworth?
Butterworth.
Harriet
I think it's Buttersworth, isn't it?
Butterworth. But
Butterworth?
also, Butterworth
Buttersworth.
is not her maiden name.
don't know.
So we need to appreciate that. That's her married name. So her real name could be something else.
Sapphire.
It could be that.
It could be Harriet Sapphire.
Oh, you know what? I think it is Butterworth. You're right.
Yeah. Wait, what?
You don't think there's an S?
There's not an S. It's Mrs. Butterworth.
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 Yeah. Okay. And you're going with Harriet?
I'm locking in Harriet.
I think it's Joy. And I have no idea why I know that. But my brain is telling me, Jim, you know this. Like, with great certainty, you know this. And I don't know why. It might be from a commercial. I remember the little cartoon Buttersworth.
I mean,
bottle.
I like Joy. Joy was my second guess.
Joy Butterworth. Feels right. It's
Yeah.
Joy. It's definitely Joy.
It is Joy.
Damn,
Wow.
dude, I don't know why I know that. The brain's a fickle bitch. Memory does what it do. God damn.
Yeah.
What do you think her maiden name is? Also, how crazy do you think she was before she got married? I think before she settled down.
I don't
think
know.
Joy.
She seems kind of stiff now.
Yeah, I think Joy's a little stiff now, but she is a slippery bitch back in the day. Let me just tell you. People knew.
I mean, she can make a mess.
She can make a mess. She's sticky, that one.
Yep.
And, when Mr. Butterworth found her, I like to think it was like Pretty Woman. She was on the corner. Butterworth pulls up in his limousine. He's like, you know what? Let's go. Get in here. We're going to go shopping. I'm going to take you out for some breakfast. And then, then he really discovered that he cared for her deeply. They broke their one rule. He kissed her on the lips, Nick.
Yep.
And they were syrupy.
So you got another letter there?
Did you write this question because of my Twitter poll about how to pronounce the word syrup?
No.
All right.
No, actually.
Syrup.
Overwhelmingly, people picked the wrong one. Syrup. That's how both of you say it?
That's
Syrup. Yeah.
I think
syrup.
I think that
It's syrup. It's syrup. There's nothing about the word that would even imply syrup.
I like how
SY is not sir.
I like how blind you are to just completely oblivious to what you just said.
What?
That overwhelmingly people picked the wrong one.
Yes. Democracy can fail, Nick. Hitler was elected democratically.
That says more about you.
I think in my adversity.
And Laura.
And Laura. Question second one, I think. I hope.
Yeah.
By the way, I'll accept syrup.
Okay. Thank you. I accept your apology.
I'll allow you to continue saying syrup.
I would
think it's
go
fine.
so far as to say that 2/3 of the people in this room don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Then we should default to what I think, because I do give a shit. So let's go with what I think. Hung up on my ex from Anonymous. Hi, all. I'll try to keep this letter short, but I think about this way too often, and that's part of my problem. Oh, I should mention I use male pronouns. If this letter's a little too love line, feel free to ignore it, but it's not your standard how do I get over her question, so here we go. My last serious relationship lasted about 3 years. I was in my mid-20s, and while she wasn't my first girlfriend, she was the first one I felt really in love with. It was mostly happy and drama-free until it wasn't. My ex and her entire family had very different views on politics and religion, but one thing we had in common is that neither of us cared enough about the subjects to argue. We were both very keen, agreeing to disagree. It just didn't come up much, and we liked it that way. But we had an apartment together, we traveled together, we experienced loss together, and none of that caused any drama. For a while, we were just an example of how opposites could attract. It was nice while it lasted. I'm certainly not going to put myself in that position again, but I learned this lesson the hard way. The relationship ended in late 2016. I'm sure you'll remember the enormous shift in political discourse that was happening at that time. All of the sudden, she was sharing political memes, clips, and ideas with me that felt much grosser when she actually spoke them out loud. She also felt the incompatibility on her end. It was finally an issue we had to deal with. We were on opposite sides in the culture war. We started arguing a lot and fell out of love pretty damn quick. It was mostly a mutual breakup. We stayed in friendly communication for a few months, but once she started dating someone the polar opposite of me, I ended communication and moved on. Turns out they're perfect for each other.
Have we not already read this?
I don't think so. We've had back in 2016 we had questions about politics. So yeah.
Did we have a similar one to this?
I think we've had adjacent questions
I don't know.
that have to do with
Oh!
relationships and
familiar
politics.
to me.
I think we've already done this one on Ice Cream Social.
Oh, really?
I think they also sent this letter to Ice Cream Social.
Let's see.
I was like,
Okay.
that's why this sounds familiar.
Huh. All
because
right.
I've read it.
Somebody's double dipping up in this bitch. All right, let's see how this
Oh,
goes.
no, this will be fun because then we can
just
compare.
get a lot of Jacob on this.
No,
This
we
is
can
really funny.
compare answers.
Okay.
I also don't remember what we said.
Yeah. All right. I ended communication, moved on. Turns out they're perfect for each other. I've heard through the grapevine they're married and expecting. Good for them.
Yep.
I wish them all the
That's
best. I have zero romantic hangups. Since then, I've casually dated a few people, but I'm now a homeowner, and I've got to say I love having a house to myself. I wouldn't mind going through this series of low-commitment friends with benefits type relationships for the foreseeable future, but who knows? With all the context out of the way, here's the actual problem. It's been over 5 years since we've spoken a word. I'll occasionally see her around town, where I'll flick her a peace sign and go on my way. I have no urge to actually speak with her. But not a day goes by where I don't read an article or hear something on a podcast and think, my ex should hear this. It's like my brain is still constantly looking for ways to make her see my side. It wants to engage in pointless debate. If she says this, I can counter with that. Surely she'll realize how awful the things she's saying are this time. We all know trying to change someone's political views is a fool's errand, especially when they've gotten deep into conspiracies and propaganda. But it's probably the thing I daydream about most. It distracts me from work and occasionally keeps me up at night. I find clearing my mind to be very difficult. I keep thinking about hypothetical arguments that are never going to come up, about how I could finally make her see the light. Like I said, it's not a romantic hang-up. I don't plan on ever speaking with her again. Yet she's always on my mind, or at least my imaginary construct of her is. Other than that, my life's going pretty well. I feel silly signing up for therapy just to ramble on about what I think my ex would say about a given topic. Do you have any tips on how to get this girl out of my head for good? Getting this all written down has helped some, and I've been working on learning meditation, which certainly has been helpful in other areas, but doesn't seem to be helping with this. Thanks and I love the show. Let's keep this anonymous. P.S. I remember somebody wrote a scoop mail years ago where the listener mentioned they were staying friends with an ex but really struggling. Matt's answer was a very simple question. Why do you want to be friends with this girl? Do you want to be invited to her wedding someday? That simple statement really helped me move on at the time. I want to buy Matt a beer someday. Please pass along my thanks to Mr. Donnelly. Thanks, Anonymous.
I mean, you did that. You wrote us at Ice Cream Social as well. And said, like gave us the 411. Gave us, it said like, I sent this letter into Pod Therapy. I'm also
cool.
sending it to you guys.
Oh, okay, fun. All
That's
right,
why
great.
I'm not surprised.
All right. Okay.
Double dipping. Also, apparently we must get to our cues about the same speed then.
Yeah.
Dang, okay.
Yeah, I think that one is, well, I mean, especially by the time this episode comes out, it's been out for a few weeks on Ice Cream Social.
I feel like I heard that one because that was the one that when you and I went to the bar, I said, hey, somebody tagged me and told me that they imitated us at an hour into the show. And so I played it for you at the bar and they played our jingle and started imitating us.
That would be it.
That was it. So here's what Pod Therapy would say.
Well, here we are.
And by they played your jingle,
Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob did this. Yeah.
I am they.
Well, so what'd you
I'm
tell
the
us?
Wizard of Oz.
I'm trying to remember.
I hope he contradicts every
Okay,
fucking
so
word.
here's the thing. Number one, I'll start by validating this.
Okay.
Okay, because I have imaginary debates
Yeah,
in my
me
head
too. Yeah.
constantly.
Nonstop. Yeah.
And it's never with somebody just on the street.
No.
It's somebody who I care about.
Yes.
It's always somebody who means something to me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's usually individuals who I know they have a different belief system, but we don't talk about it.
Right.
For whatever reason, I don't know why that is, but I suppose because it doesn't do any good to daydream about conversations you actually have.
No. Yeah. That is
you
memory.
you just kind of prepare yourself and you fuel yourself for this imaginary conversation, this imaginary debate that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So first off, let's talk about the meaning behind this.
Yeah.
And more specifically, let's not put more meaning to it than what's actually there.
Yeah.
Because I think it would become really easy for you in this situation. And maybe this is what you're doing. It kind of sounds like maybe this is what you're doing, is because she is an ex and there was a romantic connection, that you think that somehow this means that you're just still somehow hung up on her, or maybe there's some kind of romantic connection. And I don't think that's the case at all.
Doesn't seem like it.
I don't. Yeah. Okay. Because it seems to me that she's just filling a role in your head right now to have somebody that you can speak about something you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about this topic. I want to talk about it.
Right.
I have to create some sort of scenario in my head so I can process this information.
Yeah.
She just happens to be sitting in that seat.
Yes. That's what I see too. I definitely agree with you. It's not a romantic thing. Ryder, when you say things like, boy, how do I get over her? She's clearly still in my head. I don't know that I agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
Because this is such a common thing to do. And what's interesting is you're accidentally doing something in a way that's probably not helpful to you, but you're adopting a strategy that we use in therapy sometimes, depending upon the situation. It's called externalization. So like this is something we used to use in rehabs and I use from time to time today, where sometimes a person has a problem and they're struggling with that problem. Like let's say addiction or something like that. They're trying to quit smoking. And I'll tell them, I want you to externalize the problem. I want you to give it a personality. I want you to think about it as a person, as an entity. You can come up with a character if you want. I don't care. But that's the thing. And it represents that. And it has a perspective. It isn't just it wants you to smoke. It has a reason for that. What is that reason? How does it talk? What is the way it thinks? And the person really has a lot more success when they take the problem and they personify it, because our human brains do better with persons than abstract concepts.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are, we generally are wired from all those years of evolution being a tribal species to assess ideas through a speaker, right? So like the virtues of civil rights don't have the same pow to it if you don't hear them through Martin Luther King Jr. And like, there's a lot of people that are like, well, I think, the Black Lives Matter thing is a problem, and I don't think it's a good movement. And you say, do you like MLK? They go, well, hold on. MLK is sacred. That is a good man. He fought a good fight. And yeah, his words still resonate.
Clip of Jim saying that very clean.
Yeah. It's still there.
About how he hates it.
Black Lives Matter, except for MLK. So
no, I'm not airing that.
You're going to just cut that part out. That's fine. There'll be a new drop. So it's amazing how humans, whenever we personify a concept, now we can think about the same arguments that entire cloud of ideas might make that make the most sense through that speaker. And this is a normal thing to do. I do it too with politics. I'm doing it right now. I've been doing it nonstop. I do this notoriously whenever I'm like on long drives or like I'm in the shower or something like that. I'm having a debate. Mm-hmm. And these days I'm specifically debating one particular therapist that I know. It's not Nick. Who's in the north.
No, I already know.
You already know who this is?
I know who it is.
Because we have a slight Twitter beef going on over the guns and mental health thing.
Yeah.
And we're planning on doing a crossover where I go on his podcast, and I know the debate is going to be, I think it's not a mental health issue. I think it's a guns issue. And he's very clearly on the other side of that. He feels it is a mental health issue, not a guns issue. And he's very adamant about the Second Amendment. And so, like, I'm constantly in my head, like, imagining what he will say. That is more useful as a debate strategy than me just looking up all the arguments anybody's ever said from that perspective. I'm not likely to bump into 99% of those. I'm likely to bump into the ones he would say from his human perspective. So that's what my brain fixates on, because that's the most likely combatant or debate opponent I would ever meet.
Yeah.
That's why my brain focuses there.
And it makes sense, and it's not, even though you're using the example of a debate, and so did the writer,
right?
It's not always from the sense of like, I'm preparing for a debate. A lot of times it's just a way to process information.
Yes.
and a way to
You're wrapping a human voice and face
so
on
I need to
harness
rehearse
it.
the information.
Yes.
I need to file it away, and having a discussion, an imaginary discussion in my head helps me file it away.
Yeah.
So all she is doing for you right now, in my opinion, is she is cast to play a character
Yes.
in this particular scene.
Yep.
In the same way that Miles Teller was cast to play Rooster in Top Gun Maverick.
Great point.
Because he actually, in
Yes.
real life, looks very similar to Meg Ryan and Anthony Edwards. So if they were to have a kid, it would probably
It would
like
look
that.
like him.
And so putting like a real face
Yes.
into that
You need that.
helps.
It's a caricature portrayal.
Exactly.
I think is what you're saying.
Go see Top Gun
I think
Maverick.
that's the point we're really trying to make here. But no, and I think it's totally normal, writer. Again, it's not something I think you should meditate to get away from. I think you're also being overly critical of yourself, and you're saying, oh, this means something. No, it doesn't. You clearly don't have feelings for this girl. You can flash her a peace sign. You can move about your business. I promise you, if you started hanging out with a different group of friends and one of them had her point of view and you became close to that person, but that you guys started chatting about this, like if I was going to have a religious conversation, whenever I think like, how would I explain whatever my weird jelly faith thing is that I believe? When I imagine who I'm talking to, it's Nick. Because he's the person I'm most likely going to have that conversation with in life if it ever came up. So if I'm thinking about how to say things or what would be said to me that would be asked of me that I would need to think about how I would answer that hard question, I'm thinking about them from this other human, not what Penn Jillette would fucking say. I'm never going to sit across from Penn Jillette at a bar and he's going to say, Jim, I like you as a human, but this is interesting to me and I have
Penn
a question.
Jillette would never say that.
Yeah, that's what I just said. I said Penn would never fucking say that.
Neither would Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I like to imagine in my it's my fantasy. God damn it! In my fantasy, he tells me that he cares for me, but it says I find this curious. Can you tell me more? Which has also happened in the world, except for the first part. But the second part. The second part is that where he said, "Hey, this doesn't make any fucking sense." Explains to me. So it's a totally normal thing, writer. All humans do it. We do it with religion. We do it with politics. We do it with how we're going to answer questions about sports. We do it with who's better, LeBron or Michael Jordan. Like, we just do it all the time, and we just imagine what we would say to the last person that took that perspective in our lives. Because what you would say to Donald Trump or to Joe Biden is fucking irrelevant. Because you can imagine what that human would say to you. It's all irrelevant. That would never happen in real life. You'll never meet them in real life. It doesn't even feel vaguely real. And so it feels like a waste of time. Whereas putting that mask of a person you really know on that position feels more validating to actually talking about it. And more crystallizing. It's not also an exercise in futility. I think it's a very useful thinking experiment. And honestly, we use it in therapy for other means, but it's called externalization or personification. And it's absolutely a valid thinking strategy. There's nothing wrong with you.
Agreed.
And hopefully that was vaguely close to what ICS said.
I mean, I feel like we handled it better.
Yeah, that feels right. It feels right.
I don't remember what we said.
Yeah. And we did it without
better.
imitating them, mostly because he didn't play their jingle. So we can't just make that happen.
And we're
I'm Jim Jobin.
yeah, I know. I was hoping you'd throw in the ICS jingle so I could shit all over Paul for a second because I feel like he has it coming. But whatever. It never happens. My point is, it's time for another break. We're going to take one, and when we come back, we're talking about from lovers to friends. Hold on, this is the good part.
It's going to be really funny if Jim gets the show taken off the air for copyright.
Yeah,
infringement.
no, that's what I was thinking too. Today's episode is brought to you by Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, Richard Macy, Lord Colin Stewart, Sammy Scoop, Dan Martin, I almost said Dr. Martin, and Polygon.
Why not? There you go.
All right.
Congratulations, Dan.
Back to our full names. What is the full name of Captain Crunch?
Oh my God, he has a first name. What?
Is it A, Augustus Fitz Crunch?
That feels good.
B, Horatio Magellan Crunch?
That also feels good.
C, Charles Winston Crunch?
Damn, that's also
D,
viable.
Spencer Addington Crunch? Or E, Adolf Ida Crunch?
Okay, we can let go of that one.
If you'd like to join the Therapy Producers, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
Give me B again.
Horatio Magellan Crunch.
That's mine.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most.
I'm locking that one in.
That was smart. Yeah, I feel like that was smart. Obviously, nautical explorers.
I'm locking in the one with Magellan.
What was the first one?
Augustus Fitz Crunch.
I feel good about that one.
That's pretty good.
I do feel good about that one. I feel like he's an Augustus. What's choice C?
Charles Winston Crunch.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I like all of them,
I know,
really.
I do like that one too. He has
Adolf?
a French
I
hat.
love it.
Is D Adolf or is E Adolf?
E is Adolf.
All right, what was D?
Spencer Addington Crunch.
Okay, his hat is in a sideways position, like as I imagine French military are for whatever reason. I feel like that should inform my choice.
Go ahead.
And none of those sounded French. So
I don't believe Magellan was French, no.
I'm going with Augustus.
Augustus Fitzcrunch.
Feels right.
Okay.
The answer is Horatio
God
Magellan
damn it.
Crunch.
Yeah, it's oh, he's ripping off the shirt. Oh, damn! We're 1 for 1. We're gonna need a tiebreaker, Tam.
Tiebreaker coming up.
Oh,
I'll come up with a Top Gun
yeah,
trivia question.
That's
then.
legit. From lovers to friends. Beginning, this is way more intimidating than I thought it would be. I give props to everybody who is creative and able to be witty before asking for advice. I feel like the whole letter is just a jumbled mess. So good luck, guys. All right, I'm 23 years old and a female, and my boyfriend is also 23. We met during my first semester freshman year of college, his sophomore year, and immediately began dating. Our personalities fit together like puzzle pieces. However, we didn't have much in common. We knew this, but we got along so well that we didn't think it really mattered. We broke up once about a year in because of him having some complicated feelings about a friend. But we got back together about 6 months later because there was never a problem with the relationship between him and myself. To give some background, I'm from a pretty toxic family. Incarcerated father when I was 15, manipulative mother and stepfather, violent brother, absent sister, and an obviously favorited sister. I was always the quiet middle child who wanted to solve the conflicts and stay out of the way. I've financially supported myself since I was 16 years old, and although technically I could have always asked for help, I knew it would get thrown in my face later, so I didn't. My boyfriend and I went through college together, the pandemic, and now we're living together. Meeting him right off the bat in college gave me an opportunity to mostly cut off my family. We basically lived together through college, so I knew things wouldn't be too different. Now we've been living together for about 7 months and have been dating about 3.5 years, and our relationship is not bad, but it doesn't feel like we're 23 years old at all. My medication that I was on killed my sex drive, so I assumed that's why we weren't having sex, but I switched medication and I can feel myself sexually attracted to characters on TV shows and stuff, but I don't get turned on by him as much as I used to. We never do anything together anymore, even after I've been intentional about telling him things that I want to do sexually. Lately, it seems like every few months we sit down to have a conversation about what we need from each other. Last time, we wrote it down and keep the papers on our nightstands. The one I wrote for him says that I need little surprises, dates every now and then, and flowers. That was 6 months ago, and none of those have happened. I know that he loves me, but he shows it differently than how I receive love, and so there's like a language barrier there, I guess. I'm also beginning to look forward to an engagement and children in the future, but when I bring it up, he avoids the conversation. His parents are basically roommates. They have separate rooms, but get along great. I know he's scared to end up in a marriage like that. I also don't want that, but I don't want to be dating somebody for 5 years, and they're still hesitating to propose. Another big thing is that I for sure want children, and his response is, I don't know if I'll want them. When we get older, I'll decide. I guess that's a valid response, but what if he never ends up wanting them?
They're how old currently?
23.
23? Okay.
Yep. All of this is fine for me because I'm a low-key person and I do love him, but lately my concern is that I find myself missing dating. I miss being flirted with and getting to know people. I find myself developing very minor crushes on people here and there. Is this what it's like to fall out of love? Is it normal to have these feelings when you're almost 4 years into a relationship? I've never had like a best friend, so sometimes I wonder if I love him the way I would love a best friend. He and I have talked about this, and we joke about breaking up, but continuing to live together just because we get along pretty well and it's convenient. And sometimes I wonder if we're both just waiting to see who is serious about that idea. I've gotten very attached to his family and friends, and it's really the first time in my life I've had stability, and it's so addicting that I would put up with a roommate situation for a marriage if it meant stability. If he and I decide to split, I would truly have nobody in my life. I accidentally isolated myself during the relationship, and now I feel stuck. I guess I'm asking if these are normal feelings for a relationship. I think I know the answer, but I don't know anybody who's been in a similar situation, so I guess I need advice from an outside point of view. I know it's selfish to stay in this relationship out of convenience, but I'm worried that this is what love looks like when you've been together so long that I'm afraid to throw it away and then look back and realize I let go of a good thing. Losing him would also mean losing my best friend and a group of best friends, his friends. We all joke that if we broke up, I would remain in the group, but again, I don't know if that's just something that works out in sitcoms. I'm worried that he's just staying with me because I'm easy enough to get along with, and he hates the idea of having to date other people. I feel like he's settling for me, and that he loves me like a best friend. I don't know if I should be happy I'm in such a healthy situation, or if I should be seeking somebody who I have more in common with, and who I feel more physical chemistry with. Insert cheesy closing paragraph about how much you guys do for mental health, and how maybe someday I'll sponsor the show when I have an extra $1 a month. Sincerely confused, anonymous, pronouns are she and her.
Oh, thanks for sending us an easy one to end on.
Yeah, stick the landing. It's a good one, though.
It's...
I like this. Because a lot of times you get questions like, oh my gosh, my relationship's so toxic, but like, we have so much invested. What do I do? This one's kind of the opposite foot, right? Because it's like, it's easy. It's easy.
It's not toxic.
We like each other. We're best friends. We're missing some of the other chemistry stuff. We're not sexual. I miss the flirting. We're both 23, been together 3.5 years. That wasn't lost on my ears. Because I'm like, oh, damn, you babies.
Yeah.
Like, you babies, dog. You can't even rent from Hertz Rent-A-Car, you know?
You can now. They just give you an extra fee.
Yeah.
Did they really?
Yeah.
So
That's how it's always. That's how it's always been.
Is that the case?
Not always. Not
If
when
you're
I
under-
worked at a rental car place.
Really?
Yeah, when I worked
Wasn't
at,
it 26?
I used to work at Avis Rent a Car.
When I was
it was
under
25.
Yeah, when I was under 25, I could rent a car, but it was more expensive.
It was
Yeah.
in
No, we didn't
Louisiana,
even have
though,
a-
and
we
in
didn't even
fairness,
have a
they
fee.
also gave him a 40 whenever they gave him the keys.
Why would I rent a car in Louisiana?
Is that? Oh, that's okay. Yeah, you're right. Logically, that doesn't add up.
I'd rent a car like
So-
on tours and stuff.
Tours.
Tours.
Yeah,
Tours.
Tours.
Yeah, we're all saying the same thing. Tours.
Yeah. Right.
Fine. Syrup.
So, I mean, it's kind of like,
syrup. It's just syrup.
so your relationship is at, let's just say, a 7, and the question is like, should it be at a 9? Should it be at a 10? Like, we're happy, we're comfortable, but
Yeah.
should there be more to it?
Mm-hmm.
That's an incredibly hard question
It
to
is a
answer.
hard question, right? Because it's the gambler's dilemma.
Yeah.
It's like, do you take door number 1? Like, you already have a pretty good showcase here. Or are you
Yeah.
going to risk it all and go for the other one? Like, ooh, I don't know.
I think it's pretty simple.
Oh, shit.
I think it's simple.
All right.
Okay.
It
Look at
is.
this.
Can you picture yourself doing exactly what you're doing for the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, you've got your answer. If the answer is no, you've got your answer.
So,
I kind of like that.
but there's
Well,
so many unknowns.
If this is it,
yeah.
what you have right now, if this is it forever,
Okay. This is as good as it gets.
this is as good as it gets. This is as bad as it gets.
And
It's just
snapshot,
this.
because right now there's no kids.
right.
And,
I mean, and
you
life
want
is
them.
and life is going to change.
Yeah.
If this is it,
Yeah.
and I'm including no kids.
I don't know. That's a hard question, buddy.
I mean,
Because
if you
you're
throw,
betting on potentials, right?
if you're throwing
23.
in like, but I mean, do you feel that you have to have kids to be happy
Right.
in
That's a good
in your life going forward?
Right.
I think that's part of my question here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you feel like your mate does not have to have kids to be happy, then I think that's part of the calculation that has to go into this.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, later on down the road, let's say you want to have kids, and so you have this conversation again, and then your partner's now made up his mind. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
no, I really don't want kids. You can't then be upset
Right.
because it was clear all along.
Like my
I mean,
wife and I have never wanted children. We from when we started dating, we've both been in agreement that we've never wanted children. If one of us suddenly 180'd now,
Yeah.
it'd be bad.
Yeah.
It'd be real bad. Fine for our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
wait, are you saying you're not going to babysit my kids? Like, I'm getting a lot of mixed feelings.
I've repeated that to you several times.
I feel like it's been inconsistent.
I've repeated those words to you.
Looking back, Nick, I'm sorry I didn't pick you. It seems like now it's really obvious.
Yep, I agree.
He's literally saying
See,
it would ruin his relationship.
I knew it'd be a good discussion.
Yeah.
'cause
No, it opened up a lot of important channels. I feel like we've all learned something today.
I feel like one of us has.
That's true.
But no, I mean I think you need to look at your life right now and say, like, if this is it, am I good with this being my life? Honestly, from listening to someone read an email that you wrote to 3 strangers, it seems like that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, and it's really,
But I don't know.
It's tough too, like being that young.
Yep.
And this being kind of the first serious relationship.
Yep.
It does make it very difficult because you don't have a whole lot to really compare to.
Nope.
You know, and it really wasn't until Maverick made it to Top Gun where he had Iceman, you know, and he could compare himself to that. So I just want to draw everyone's attention. That's 3 questions in a row.
It is.
I've tied back.
Yeah,
So
it's really.
It didn't feel forced at all.
Mission accomplished.
No, you've
felt perfectly natural and just like it belonged.
Yeah, just an easy sequitur, really. Just so perfect. And I hope you're working on a tiebreaker because that's going to become important.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, I want to bring your attention.
Trying to answer this question.
I'll stop.
Yeah,
I'll stop.
Yeah.
I'll stop
You know what,
doing
let me
my
bail
job.
you out of here.
Yeah,
I think you're going to come back to it anyway. You may as well just do something more productive. All right.
I feel like I've already handled this one anyway.
Yeah, I feel like Jacob's already kind of there. All right, so listen, writer, there's actually some good psychology here that you should probably look into that would be useful. So if you were my patient and you would sit down with me and you were telling me this, the first thing I would want to do, well, okay, there's 2 plans of attack I'd have. One would kind of sound where Jacob's coming from. I wouldn't want to put you on the spot and say you need to make a decision based on what you have currently, because I don't think that, in my opinion, that's not giving us enough insight into the future. You have to bet on potentials, right? So you've got your current boyfriend, you're betting on potentials now. There's a lot of things in the dark. There's a lot of things that are known, right? So there's things he's great, we're great, I like him, it's stability, I crave stability, I like his family, I could be happy with this dude forever, even if we, didn't have other sparks. I could be great with him. I'm so grateful.
Great.
And there's a bunch of unknowns that you dislike, right? Like, hey, I don't like being in the dark about this kids thing. I really need an answer on that. That would kind of be a deal breaker for me. It's still up in the air. We're very young. Like, I don't have a lot of experience. How do I know I don't like other things? There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that are still in the mystery box you don't know. So I would be very interested in 2 things. One, I would want to be doing values clarification with you, where I'd want to sit down and investigate and ask hard questions and probing questions from a therapeutic angle, trying to kind of uncover what does matter to you. Like, what are the things that you know about yourself already at 23 years old that you know are really important? And you've identified some of that, like, kids, really important. Family stability seems to be something rising to the top here. That's like, I need some kind of stability. I will choose somebody that's not adventurous and maybe not, exciting whirlwind, Maverick Top Gun. I might choose Iceman. I want somebody who's like, is going to become the Admiral of the Navy. Like, he's a career professional. I take him seriously. I trust this guy. That's what I'm looking for, stability and consistency. That's important for us to identify as a trait that you're looking for in a mate. So number 1, phase 1 of what, a therapist might want to do with you is values clarification and analysis. We would also strongly point out to you, very rarely at 23 do we know all the things that we're going to, be at 33, right? Because some things do change. But there's some flavors, some appetites that generally do stick. Like, you just know certain things about yourself. Like, you might just crave consistency, and that's who you are. The second area of attack that I would want to point you to, and this is something I encourage you to look into, there is a really interesting theory in marriage and family therapy that we call the triangle theory of love. And I've mentioned on the show once or twice, I don't know if I've ever really done much with it, but the triangle theory of love basically says, imagine a triangle, and the 3 points of the triangle are different ingredients that can show up in this stew of your relationship. Now, the amount of the ingredients changes the flavor profile of the relationship. And you could find yourself anywhere inside of that triangle. You could find yourself mostly on one point of the triangle. You could find yourself between 2 points. You could find yourself on the other side of the triangle, and you can float anywhere in there. Where you are in the triangle and the different amounts of ingredients you have actually has different names. Like, we have different ways to name different types of relationships. So think about the 3 points of the triangle. The 3 points, the 3 big ingredients, we break down to these big 3. We have passion, which is sexuality, sexual chemistry, that magnetism. We have intimacy, which we define as friendliness, connection, bond, likability, friendship. Like, and you mentioned that. He's your best friend, so intimacy is very high. And then the third piece of the triangle is what we call commitment, which is loyalty, bond, consistency, sense of integration with one another. So what's interesting is you can take pieces of those ingredients, and when you merge them together, you might get different recipes. Like, if you just have, passion, like high sex, but in like sexual chemistry, but you don't have any commitment whatsoever, and you don't even know each other that well to be that very close. Okay, like you're describing a fling, right? You're describing like a whirlwind summer romance. Like this is fun. It's a fling. You don't know each other. It's like Grease. It's John Travolta and what was that girl's name? Anybody?
Olivia Newton-John?
That one. She's famous too. So like they don't know
Very
anything about
famous.
each other, and like they're not, they can't have a lot of loyalty. So like it's just there. So like we have different words for all these different corners of the market here. If you're wondering, like we have one called fatuous love, which is like that whirlwind, fast-paced, romance. They don't really know each other, they don't have commitment, but like they really like each other or whatever. There's passion. So like we have all these different words. There's companionate love. That's what I think you guys have. So I would describe your portion of the triangle, and you should look up the whole triangle theory and find what all the different types of love are called. But we might describe what you're going through as what's called companionate love, which means it has very high commitment. It's very strong in the loyalty bond. It's also very strong in the intimacy bond, not the passion bond. It's lacking passion, but we're very close. We care for each other, and we have deep commitment to each other. So it's like that deep, long-term friendship, high closeness, communication, high sharing. So is it bad to be in that portion of the triangle? No, they're all valid, legitimate forms of relationship. We would argue that it's natural for humans to also migrate from corner to corner and find themselves in different areas of the Venn diagram at different times. And some long-term relationships drift all the way down to just commitment, and they just have that. And they might even become like an empty relationship. They're not friendly anymore, they're not passionate anymore, but they're just married. And we still look at that and say that's completely legitimate, and we consider it all some version of the word love. That's why we call it the triangle of love. We believe everything in the triangle is legitimately love, and then we believe outside of the triangle is non-love. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a theory that captures this idea, and I think that you should look into it. The very center of the triangle has a name, and that's when it has everything, right? It has high intimacy, high passion, high commitment. We call it consummate love. And this is what people like in stories talk about, complete or true love. We consider it in psychology inherently temporary. We don't believe it's a permanent thing. We believe it's fictional mostly. It's a flurry. It's something you experience for small periods of your life where you have all three at the same time, and it's a high, it's a rush. But it's wrong to only aspire for that because we don't think that that's something you're always going to attain. So depending on who your therapist is, they might listen to your story and say, wow, you've achieved companionate love. Boy, is that special. Let's look at your values and let's figure out if that's really important to you. Let's also do some troubleshooting and figure out, is this going to be something that would appeal to your boyfriend forever? Is he starting to drift away from you? You guys are very young. Do you feel like you've experienced enough in life? Have you ever experienced sexual passion? Have you ever experienced the fling, the flirting, the heart-rushing, heart-pumping thing? Do you feel like you're ready to settle down and just never have that in life? What if, as Jacob said, you never have access to that? Are you okay with it? These are some really deep existential questions. But, I think that you're young. I think you have a great opportunity to examine this. It is the kind of thing, you said you're in college. I would consider going to talk to the college campus counselor and say that you want to talk about relationship stuff. I think they're very comfortable with that. Or if there's a grad school somewhere nearby that has student counselors, I think that would be a really good idea. I would strongly encourage you to sit down and talk about it.
Now, what are your thoughts on just kind of writing it out? Because, they obviously talk about it. They joke about it openly. So
If
they've
we broke
obviously
up, we'd stay together.
Yeah, so they've obviously had kind of this conversation to some degree, knowing that each other is a little kind of, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but just kind of questioning.
They're aware
where
of
this
it.
is at.
They're aware of their own situation.
And I think that's the key, is their level of awareness. What are your thoughts on if you just say, you don't have to do anything with it right now. You're aware of it. You're not married. You're not really, sounds like there's some level of commitment in the sense that there's some connection with friends, social network, housing.
She said he's all she has.
Yeah.
And his
there's
friends are her friends.
I guess that's kind of that's the piece that does worry me a little bit, because I think if there was a little bit more independence there between the two of them, you could just kind of say all right, well, let's just keep an eye on it.
Right.
Let's not, we don't necessarily have to do anything right now.
There's no room for her to naturally spark into other relationships because she has no natural engagement with anybody outside of this ecosystem.
So maybe that's part of it, is not necessarily her dating other people, but her finding friends.
Right.
social groups outside of
Right.
that group, and to just kind of
I think
build a
this-
little bit more
This
independence.
same letter from a 43-year-old would have a different flavor. We'd hear this and
Yeah.
go, oh, yeah, your long-term relationship has grown stagnant and you're wondering if there's anything else out there. And we'd be saying words like, well, midlife crisis. Like this is where people start becoming very introspective and asking, am I missing out? Is this my last hurrah? Is this what I'm settling for? Am I okay with this? Because the writer's 23, we're like, ooh, okay, this is a different set of circumstances. Like stability is kind of hard to find. And like you guys have some pretty strong qualities that a lot of we don't associate with 20s. We associate 20s with like flurries and drama and like you guys are stable and cool. But then we also think, well, you're young and like this is whenever a lot of people have those sexual experiences or try the buffet of humanity and figure out what they do like and don't like. But then there's also like a lot of heartbreak and like a lot of thorny bushes out there too. And like we don't want you to get hurt when you're already safe and stable and you're happy. So there's so much complexity to this that it's like really hard to say do this or don't do that, because I think you, writer, have so much left to learn about yourself. And I think that's the number one thing I'm concerned about is, do you know enough about yourself to know, would I need to try another box?
No, here's to kind of maybe end on a good note,
Sure.
kind of the silver lining here. The writer talks about coming from a very unhealthy environment,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
A very toxic setting.
Mhm.
We just got done addressing a letter talking about how we learn about adult relationships by watching the relationships we grow up around.
Sure, yeah.
Well, now what you have is you've got a really good comparison. So hypothetically, if this relationship doesn't work out and you start kind of going back into the ocean and start finding other fish, so to speak, and you start, creating these other relationships, you now have something healthy to compare it to, as opposed to it being, now, obviously you've identified that this wasn't completely how you want it,
Right.
but it's not like you only have toxic relationships.
Right.
That's the thing that I think would be really concerning.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I do. I know. I totally do. And I'll tell you, like, okay, I want to give you. I completely agree with what you just said. I think it also scares the hell out of me, though, because if I were in the writer's shoes and I listened to that advice, I would be thinking, but what if one day I look back and go, oh, okay, good. The first relationship I had at 23 was a great one.
Okay.
And now I've had train wrecks.
Sure.
And now I wish I hadn't listened to those
Okay.
guys and tried something new.
Let me just tell you this. Let me just tell
Scary
you
to
this
stick
right
the
now.
fork in the
Of
road.
course, it's scary to think about
Yeah.
that. And again, like
Change
I
is
can,
scary.
I
Yes.
can relate that. We just talked about this a couple episodes ago. Like I can relate back to that. Like when I went through my divorce,
Right.
and thinking like, oh my God, I had the best relationship ever. I'll never have that again. And you kind of get to this realization like, there's 8 billion people on the planet.
Sure. Yeah. The
Okay.
odds are good. You'll find
The odds are in your favor.
Right.
Like the idea that this is the best relationship that will ever exist or that has ever existed.
Right.
It does feel scary to leave that or get out of that situation. Totally understand. However, it can happen again. It totally can happen again.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, I've said my piece.
Yeah.
And I actually
They,
like Jacob's
they both just
idea.
looked at me like I was
Oh,
going
I
to add
wasn't
something
sure.
to it. And I was like, I've already said what
I'm
I've had
done.
to say.
I'll tell you this. The answer to this, I think, comes down to two things.
I think those are all. I think that's all good advice, by the way.
One, who are you? Two, who is your partner? And that's the key ingredients to me is that. Like, for me, I have generally lived my life betting on the safest thing. And that is authentic for me, and I feel good about that. Are there going to be pieces of that feel missing in life, like never going on adventures and seeing some things? And my 20s were spent raising a family. I didn't have any adventures. I didn't do any cool, like, having a lot of dating stories or anything like that. Like, no, I married and started a family, and, like, that was my life. And so, like, but that is authentically who I am. I'm very conservative in those ways, and I get a lot of joy from those value choices because that's an alignment, it's congruent with who I am, and I feel safe and I'm happiest. And in my book, Dad Vice, 50 Fatherly Life Lessons, dadvicebook.com.
I thought your book was Dad Advice.
Dad Vice.
Dad Advice?
Dad Vice.
Dad Advice.
Dadvicebook.com. I tell a story
Dad
in there
Advice.
where I remember hearing a tale as a parable at a camp where they told the story of the birds, and the birds going through the getting their feathers from God. It's the story. And God's reaching in, he pulls out feathers, and each bird is in line. And the bird finally gets up to the front of the line, and he's handed like a beautiful suit of feathers. And I forget which example I use in the thing, but let's assume it's like a toucan or something like that. And the bird's like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And I really love this. It's great. But he says, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to get back in line and find something even better, right? So he passes, he gets back in line. By the time he gets back up there, he's offered another great set. I think it's like a hawk or something. It's like the fastest, animal in the world. He's like, oh my gosh, the peregrine falcon. This is so cool. This is way better than the toucan. Oh, I'll bet you if I get back in line, I'll find something even better, right? And so, of course, it comes back to bite him in the ass. He gets back to the front of the line. God reaches into the thing here.
Pigeon.
He pulls out a vulture.
Bites him in the ass.
Bites him in the ass. God just bites him in the ass. Yeah, God reaches down there. He pulls out a shaggy piece of shit set of feathers. It's the vulture. The bird becomes the image of death, and he's really unhappy with his choice. And like the parable that I repeat in the book that I was taught as a kid was, hey, there's a lesson here about like being grateful. Like, don't let progress get in the way of perfection, that kind of thing. Like, choose what's good. Like, go with what's working, right? And so, like,
seems like if you could pass on the first two, you could just pass on the vulture too.
No, it was the last. It was the last set. It was the last set. There were none left. This was the last one. So.
Just say it.
It was the last one. There's a finite amount of bird options in the thing.
But that's a lot. I mean,
there
are a lot of birds.
There are only so many birds.
There are a lot of birds, though, Joe.
They have infinite time. This is pre-time. They can do things.
You're talking about a lot of birds.
You're bringing the wrong questions to a shitty illustration. My point is...
I agree it's a shitty illustration.
That lesson works for Jim, right? That lesson is very congruent with Jim, which is, hey, when you find something that's working, go ahead and move forward with that. So, I don't know. But my point was, this question comes down to who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Who's your partner? If your partner is already starting to drift away and you're looking at this and going, I don't think you're going to stay with me in 5 years because you never have gotten out and had the zing and had the excitement and had the thrill, and we just started playing house at a really young age and just worked, well, then you're allowed to bring those existential questions to the now because apparently they're already starting to like be present. You guys are already imagining, what if we weren't together? Well, that gets harder and harder to laugh at when you've invested 8 years into this shit.
Yeah.
An old friend of mine, when my wife and I first got married, an old friend of mine who actually performed our wedding said to us, either the day before or the day of our wedding, said, I'm not a therapist. I don't do this for a living. And he had been married for a few years at this point, like 3 or 4. I mean, just a few. And he said, "Don't joke, because you guys joke about a lot of things." He said, "Don't joke about divorce, because as soon as you bring it up, that can be like a worm in your brain."
Yeah, right.
The fact that you've brought it up,
right.
And the fact that the two of you joke about it,
ice. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that was one guy's advice to me a long time ago.
Sure.
The fact that you guys joke about it makes my eyebrows go up a little bit, and that's it. It makes my eyebrows go up. That's not the end of anything. I mean, and there are people who joke about divorce and whatever.
Right.
And
they're dating.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Like, my wife and I joke about divorce here and there now.
Okay.
Like we joke about little things here and there, like, oh, I'd keep this in the divorce or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I refer to her as my first wife.
Yeah. I do that too.
Yeah, there's things like that.
Yes.
And so we have a good time with it. So you might just be having a good time with it as well.
There's
so
cracks in the ice.
I don't want to say that that's not a possibility as well.
Yeah.
But it makes my radar go off a little bit.
I don't think it's toxic.
Just
I do think
a skosh.
It tells me there's something up. But this is another point that I think needs to be brought up. You're 23. You've been in this relationship 3.5 years.
Yeah.
I don't know that you've done a lot of thinking about relationships. Most humans don't sit down and go, let me read books about love languages. Let me read books about needs. Let me think how therapists think. Let me look up love triangle or triangle theory of love. Nobody looks up this shit just because they're interested. Most humans that learn about love and learn about what works for them and what doesn't work for them and how to keep people happy. You talked about this in the letter. You said, I feel like we speak different love languages. Ironically, there's an entire book about that. And like how to make people happy.
More than one.
And like the Love Nudge app and all the things you've heard us talk about in the show, like how to methodically make sure, when you guys talk about needs, how to turn those into actions so that real results happen in the relationship. Most humans discover that because they were dating. They were dating and it was working out and then it wasn't working out and they think, why did that happen? And they go back and watch the game tape and try to figure out why it failed, and they get better through failure. You've just been locked in your early 20s in one stable, chill relationship. I don't think you or your partner have really had to sit down and say, how do you get good at doing this? How do you get good at relationship? all humans are like able to just be in companionships and be in relationships, and most of us are biologically equipped to have sex. That doesn't mean any of us have the correct training necessary to maintain a healthy one. And believe it or not, like most things worth having in life, you have to try. And so I would encourage you, writer, before you do anything else as far as exploring what your future looks like or breakup options or anything like that, I would really want you and your partner to maybe agree together to read a book about relationships and how to keep them healthy, like the 5 love languages. That could be a great place to start. And just start making it intentional to ask yourself, is what we're missing right now something that we've even really tried to fix or something we've just talked about? You know, it's one thing to be like, oh, there's a hole in the ceiling, and I hope it doesn't rain. It's another thing to say, I bought a book on how to fix holes in the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Let's read it together. And then let's go to Home Depot and start identifying. You need to take some action steps, is what I'm saying. I don't hear a lot of action steps. So I would encourage you to do that. Having said that, it's time to break this tie in this trivia challenge that has torn this podcast asunder. We can't live like this. No, there's no more questions.
Here we go.
This is it. This is the whole thing.
Here we go.
Yeah. For the enchilada.
No multiple choice.
Okay.
Gotta know this one.
All right.
When Maverick is at Charlie's house for dinner, what song is playing in the background?
Oh, Christ.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Jim, is it okay if I ask a question?
Yes.
Who's Charlie?
It's the woman that he has the
Kelly
sultry
McGinnis.
sex scene with in the first one, right?
Yes.
That in Hot Shots Part 2 they make fun of very effectively.
He makes
her breakfast.
It's brought up because he kind of laughs and she's like, "What?" And she's like, "My mom listened to this song all the time."
I mean, I mentioned, I think, in the Patreon that it's been about 20 years since I've seen this movie.
So you can eliminate any song that was a hit in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that'll probably take
all
them
right,
off
so
the
I'll
table.
say AC/DC, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
I remember it was like a power ballad and like
Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
My mom loved this song. It reminded her of my dad.
Dirty deeds done to sheep. The dirty deeds and the done to sheep.
All right, ref, can we please get a call on this? Because I'm clearly not able to recollect songs while the other guy is singing songs that are clearly not the answer. Can
Okay, yeah.
take away a point.
Jacob, stop it.
Yeah.
No.
Get him, ref.
Bad.
Pull out a fucking card.
Bad.
All right.
Here, let
I
me-
like big balls.
Yes.
She likes big balls. He likes big balls. We like big
How do
balls.
I mute him in real life? I don't know, man. I
But
remember
we've
the
got
scene.
the biggest balls
This is
of them
not
all.
helping.
All right. I'll give you multiple choice.
My balls are always bouncing from
Do you
the
have
left
multiple
and to
choice
the right.
available?
Yes.
All right, give us multiple choice.
You've lost that love and feeling.
Okay.
Sitting on the dock of the bay.
Okay.
Hot summer nights. Heard it through the grapevine.
Sitting on the dock of the bay.
Hot summer nights.
Sitting on the dock of the bay.
Sitting on the dock of the bay. That's what he fucks her to?
No.
Wait, what was the question? I thought you said it was the hot sex scene.
No. No one said that. No one said that.
That's why I didn't pick that. I'm like, go sit on the dock of the bay. There's no way that's it. There was like candles and wax and like, he's like, I'm going to take a shower. And like he comes out of a shower and like the windows are open and they're on like the ocean sitting on the dock of the bay. What scene did you say this was in?
When he's
Dirt cheap.
When he's over at her house for dinner. They're sitting outside on kind of the patio there,
Okay.
and the song's playing.
You shook me all night long.
All night long.
And that's all the time we've got for this week's episode.
I feel good
No,
about
no,
that.
no.
win.
We got to talk about Patreon stuff. Thank you to all the patrons who support the show. You can join us at patreon.com/therapy, and you can find all the fun perks, including our new Pen Pal program, which we will exclusively post on the Patreon. And then you can get linked up with Tess, and you can be a part of it. It'll be lots of fun. We have an active Discord where you can listen and talk to other people and share stories. We also post lots of deep dives and fun hangouts. And it's all sorts of active stuff at patreon.com/therapy. At this time, we have no new Therapals, Therapods, or Pterodactyls, But we do want to thank our bosses, the Saccharine 16, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of the fan club, their producers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, King of Student Loan Debt, Dr. Ben Don, Crazy Banana Scoop, Mason Miller, Carolyn Albert, Leon Kassab, Kevin Chamberlain, Malia, Richard Macy, Cindy Ash, Newstick, Lord Colin Stewart, Dirty B, Ben Stanley, Sammy Scoop, Sarah Smith, Adam Hathaway, Dan Martin, Byler T, University Jeff, and Tess Miller.
Hell's bells!
And if you would
Nice day for a white wedding.
like to hear
That's not
more of
AC/DC.
this,
Oh, is it?
uncut
Is
and
that what we're doing?
unedited,
And why wouldn't you?
and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy, and thank you for supporting mental health.
That's all the time we got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social Podcast. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, on Instagram at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
If you want to submit a question to the show, ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Cougar.
I'm Maverick.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Shut up, Iceman.
Oh, Iceman won. I'd like to be Iceman. That's not an insult. He was a square, but he got shit done. And I believe he's pivotal into the opening of the second movie.
'Cause I'm TNT.
Dynamite. Happy Memorial Day,
Did
everybody.
you know Tim Robbins was in that movie?
Who? No, he wasn't.
In the first
Oh,
one?
yeah,
The first
he
one.
was. He's Iceman's